Hello, my name is Erin, and I'm in my fifth year at Cal Poly studying landscape architecture. And I'm going to be talking about my senior project. So I'm going to be working on the Diablo Canyon Power Plant, just kind of proposing what do we do with this power plant once it's decommissioned. So for some background, to operate the power plant, they have to take in ocean water to cool off the steam that's generated to make the energy. And that water is taken in, cools off the steam, but then that water is 20 degrees warmer when they pump it in the ocean. And that means there's often an 18-degree increase in the temperature in Diablo Cove, which is right here. Not to mention when that water is pumped in, it's pumped in so fast from an 80-foot drop off that the habitat immediately below is pretty much destroyed. So these are some of the species that have been harmed by this. Many are endangered and threatened. So this project is aiming at restoring this habitat and mitigating for the damage that PG&E has done. And in 1966, they actually signed an agreement saying that, quote, should any adverse effects accrue to aquatic life due to plant construction or operation, PG&E will provide reasonable mitigation for losses incurred, end quote. So this project is essentially what that mitigation could be. For kind of a precedent in Southern California, San Onofre Power Plant had to mitigate the habitat that they destroyed through the warm water that they were pumping in and created an artificial rocky reef that's 175 acres. And they were required to do that. So that's kind of a precedent where this is coming from, that they eventually will be held accountable and have to provide this. So for some context, the power plant is located north of Avila Beach and then south of MDO State Park. And it's surrounded by mostly undeveloped area, natural hills. There's some agricultural land and trails, but for the most part, pretty undeveloped. And then kind of zooming into the site, you can see it's a very developed concrete area. Yeah, so it has the two main reactor buildings and then this massive turbine building and then lots and lots of parking. So a little bit of an eyesore in the grand scheme of the landscape around it. And then this kind of brings me into concept one. So concept one is about, it's called the return, and it's about returning the space back to the surrounding environment. But also part of this concept is keeping the research study that they have going on. So they have the longest ongoing marine science study in the country happening on site. It was started to keep the power plant accountable for any damage they do to ocean habitat. But this would propose keeping that study running to kind of give some insight into global warming and how these trends can kind of apply to global warming and help give solutions for how to mitigate that in the future. So this model is supposed to kind of mimic an artificial reef module. And it has plant overgrowth, again, signifying that nature taking back the environment for itself. And then kind of my schematic, a lot of it is depaving and restoration planting, kind of going on here, and then an artificial reef here. And then using an existing building for that research center, and then kind of developing the boardwalk here, adding more docks for field research, and then having some training areas, things like that. And then insight into kind of what those boardwalks could be, just making them look a little bit cleaner. They're pretty worn down and just concrete with like rebar sticking up through them, so not the nicest. And then concept two is called the ripple effect. So this model has a circle in the center representing the footprint of those large reactor buildings, and it has these ripples going out. Obviously the ripple effect, talking about how everything we do has an impact. So in this one, there is not plant growth except on the edges, and this is kind of to signify that the development of this site has obviously limited, habitat growth, and even killed a lot of habitat. So just supposed to show what developing a site can kind of do and how that has impacts. So this concept is more about the history of the site, kind of talking about the pros and cons of nuclear energy development, And you kind of enter through here and keeping a lot of the footprints of the building to give people an idea of the scale of the site. The buildings are way too radioactive to be able to keep. So since they have to be removed, keeping the footprints is kind of a way to convey that and what it used to be to people. So you kind of enter through here, and then these are two large greenhouses in the footprint of the reactor buildings, and then between them is this plaza area, and this form is supposed to represent a splitting atom. And in case you don't know, that's how nuclear fission works. You split an atom and that creates energy. So that's kind of where that idea is coming from. And then keeping the footprint of the turbine building and having it be kind of an outdoor museum to educate people about the history of the site. And then kind of along this walk is a timeline that people can literally walk through to kind of get an idea of how this space has been used throughout the years. And then this is kind of a perspective of that. And then my third concept is called open ocean. So one problem with the site right now is it's very closed off to the public. They have to do that for public safety because nuclear power plants can be really dangerous. So this concept is about bringing it back to people, but this model kind of represents how when we do allow public access to natural areas, it can kind of take away from the complexity of natural systems. A lot of times we have to kind of simplify things to provide public accessibility and then also public safety, which are important things, but again, do leave effects. So it's kind of why this model is a lot more manicured in its planting and a lot more simple in its form. So this concept is focused on, again, bringing this back to the people and specifically doing that with public education. So this is going to have a main building in the center in the shape of a black abalone shell, kind of as the roof canopy. And then that's because that's an endangered species that's been heavily impacted again in Diablo Cove. And then kind of the main form running through the space is this link of spaces that is in the shape of a piece of kelp. Again, a crucial part for the habitat in Diablo Cove. So there's going to be a lot of outdoor spaces, play areas for kids, touch tanks, splash pads, a lot more developed in using the infrastructure on site. No new roads or paving is going to be added. A lot of it is actually going to be depaved. But this is more about bringing people into the space. And again, there'll be planting and restoration here, but allowing trails through that so people can kind of learn about that and experience it. And this is just a concept for kind of one of those play areas, having it be ocean themed and kind of tying into that aquatic theme. So those are kind of the three ideas that I dove into for this part of the project. And then coming up, I'm going to combine those three into one cohesive plan and try and offer a variety of experiences for a variety of people instead of just diving into kind of a rabbit hole for each of those three. So thank you for listening, and I appreciate any feedback that you have. Thank you.